Welcome, everybody, to this week's podcast episode for the Financial Freedom Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Christopher Liu. And as you know, we talk about 4 different types of freedom: time, financial, location, health freedom. And in that light, I'm always scouring the globe looking for entrepreneurs, people doing things on the cutting edge, changing the world. And so today we have Sandra Gonzalez, and her background, she comes from the military, but she's turned life coach and speaker. So today's talk is going to be all about self-discipline, focus, resiliency, toughness, success, and overcoming adversity. So with that in mind, I'll introduce Sandra and welcome her to the show. So welcome, Sandra.
Well, thank you for having me. Such an honor to be here, Chris, to serve you and your community. A little bit about me. My name is Sandra Gonzalez, and I am a retired Marine officer. I had the honor, the distinction of serving 20 years of service as a U.S. Marine. Now I help high caliber entrepreneurs kick self-doubt to the curb and perfection and harness this beautiful thing I call sexy confidence. Now, sexy confidence is the thing that helps high caliber entrepreneurs take command of any room they step into so they can magnetize opportunities and impact for growth.
Yeah. And quite interesting. And one thing is, right now you're a life coach and you're a speaker and you transitioned from the military. I know that you had to overcome some adversity. So tell us, you don't have to tell us briefly, and then what are some of the principles and key ideas that you learned about resiliency, especially in these times?
Wow. Well, what a wonderful question. And so many lessons come up as you ask me that, Chris, but specifically as a high performance coach, one of the things I realized, is that it's important to really pay attention to the hints life or business is dropping along the way. So those hints, those are subtle hints. I would say they're kisses from God. They're redirecting us forward. So some of those important lessons in my life, and I've had quite a lot. I would say within the last 2 years, I went through a difficult, challenging divorce. I was married for 15 years, and that divorce left me mentally, emotionally, financially depleted. In the midst of that, I found my dad unconscious, which is no way you want to find your dad, especially the one man you look up to for support, for security. Now I find my dad unconscious. We did lose him subsequently 2 months later to COVID pneumonia. The lesson there was that it was my father's life and ultimately his demise, which taught me how to cultivate sexy confidence, which gave me, that motivation to move forward and look for the lesson. So it taught me to focus on the cure, not the disease, to shift my focus to the lesson I had learned through the difficult divorce I was going through, to shift my focus to the lesson, even though my dad might be in the ICU. What's the lesson here? How can I move forward from this? All of this while I'm trying to build my business. So, I can go on and on of the things that I also learned in the military, but the thing is, it's about bouncing back from adversity, right? Because adversity is your advantage. And once you see it as such, then you're going to be more inclined to keep moving, to fail forward.
Fascinating. I always used to view frustration and failure, but then especially catastrophic failure. As long as you have your physical being intact, then basically everything you're working on is emotional and spiritual. So always, what is that gem? What is that golden nugget that's going to get you to the next thing? And I love your thing about hints from the universe. These are literally
And if I may, Chris, another hint was one of the things that enabled me to be successful in the military, and thankfully now as an entrepreneur, is my masculine qualities, right? So I'm very driven, very self-disciplined. I love being productive. I can go on, but the thing that I realized in that moment was, when I lost my dad, I had to let go of my ego, Chris, because although my ego was the one thing that made me competitive in the military, now my ego was fueling me towards, this very uncomfortable, expensive divorce. It was my ego that I had to let go. Your ego is not your amigo. So know when to put your ego aside, and then learn from this lesson and move forward.
Yeah. And then especially with catastrophes like COVID or 2008, it really it has to crush you, and it kind of crushes your ego, and because you have no way out except if you unless you let go of your ego and all those things, and that's when you're growing. You're mentally, emotionally, spiritually growing. What you're talking about is overall we're talking about brand, and then how you branded yourself as this idea of sexy confidence. And what's interesting is what embodies especially masculine, feminine qualities with this sexy confidence, and how does it help you in your business?
Another great question, Chris. So if I may, sexy confidence is the ability to master yourself and stay calm during stressful challenges or situations. That's what sexy confidence is. So I can be very clear. I know a lot of, your viewers watching this or listening, I can only imagine what their mind conjures, right? Like, what are they thinking? But to be very clear, that's what sexy confidence is. And I witnessed it firsthand with my father. He was a perfect example of sexy confidence with, his values, his morals. He came to this country and he was very assertive in knowing what he wanted, even though he had limited education. So then, in the military, I worked for, my first commanding officer was James N. Mattis, right?
Wow.
He was my first commanding officer, and he was my first example of sexy confidence. This man was assertive. His leadership skills were on point. And the way he spoke, the way he led, he was also very, he was authentic. So I share this with you, Chris, and your viewers, because that's what sexy confidence is all about. It's allowing yourself to be authentically who you are, what you stand for, and communicate in a way, in alignment with who you are and what you stand for, your values.
Yeah, fascinating. And I know, for example, we talk about you can translate this quality. Are individuals born with this, or you develop it? Tell us more about that.
No, it's like leadership. It's this muscle that can be developed over time. And that's all sexy confidence is. It's an attitude. It's the state of mind that's developed on a daily basis. So anybody can develop it. You just have to put forth the effort. It's this muscle that must be strengthened. That's the best way to put it.
Yeah. And when you take these qualities and attributes, you can apply it to your daily life, your relationship, your families, your business. And now you're as a speaker, how can you translate that to be more authentic and magnetic on stage?
So to clarify your question, how can you take sexy confidence to be more authentic and magnetic in stage?
Yeah, when you're speaking to audiences.
Absolutely. Well, this is one of the many things that I coach, specifically, female entrepreneurs with, is to allow themselves to be authentically who they are. And it's a process, especially because it ties into self-worth. And it involves, it's like a self-discipline that you have to practice. It's simple. I'll give you a tactic that I share with my female entrepreneurs right now. Incorporate a daily routine that helps you set the tone for the day. It's simple as that, Chris, And when you incorporate a daily routine, you're going to harness the sexy confidence to be authentically yourself. And then listen to what's calling at you, not what's clawing at you. And there's a big difference, Chris.
Yeah, really interesting. And we'll talk about, and it sounds like you've found alignment, you found your purpose. What's a typical journey like, or like, do we have to go through adversity to find alignment and purposes? And how do some people, they never face adversity, and those who do, how do we stay motivated despite these challenges?
How do we stay motivated despite these challenges, right? What a good question, which is it's a question that I often get asked. Like, how did I stay motivated in the Marine Corps to endure 20 years? Because it wasn't easy. How do I stay motivated branding myself, my business, until I do experience success? So how do you stay motivated despite uncertainty, and because you never know when life is going to throw you a curveball. So I would say right off the bat, it's changing how we see life and business. It's messy. Mm-hmm. Life and business is messy, and this is okay. So be comfortable with the uncomfortable. There has to be a level of discomfort for you to grow. Mm. So, I think to answer your question, Chris, is adversity, especially when it comes to entrepreneurs, and this is why I say it, adversity is your advantage. You want to step into uncertainty. So the women that I coach, they think, especially in the beginning, they're like, Sandra, I don't have it perfect. And this is where I help them overcome perfectionism. It's like, it doesn't have to be perfect. It never will be perfect. We're human beings. So be okay with 80%. And as a result of you stepping into the unknown, which is scary, I understand, the clarity is going to come, Chris. So for for those professionals that are watching now, they've already done this to some certain extent. It's continue stepping into the unknown because the clarity will come. It's not the other way around.
A lot of the entrepreneurs, or especially were achievers, were highly successful, and it's hard to let go. A lot of us are control type A, micromanagers. How do we let go of perfectionism?
Yes, you're talking to. For me, I would pride myself on perfection. And I still catch myself, like, if my Christmas tree isn't perfect, or this meal, or if this, this speaking engagement isn't perfect. And it's in that moment, we must catch ourselves. And, it's like, give yourself a healthy dose of self-compassion. Nobody's perfect. And every master was once a disaster, right? So what you want to do is understand that perfectionism is really a cop-out. There's an underlying fear there that's the thing that's, holding you back from achieving this thing that you want. And that's where I come in, Chris, to guide this woman, to be this support system for men or women who want to achieve the sexy goal. So perfectionism, one of the things that I help them with understand, it's really a cop-out. Nobody has anything, nobody's perfect. Just be okay with the 80% and put it out there.
Yeah, I love that. And it's almost like letting go, and you just have to, like, especially as a content creator, and where you're doing so many interviews and putting out so many posts, and you because when you in the beginning you want everything to be like perfect and systematized, and but then once you have so much content, it's like kind of like now it's just get it out there. Don't worry about perfection. Something's going to resonate with one person or another, some things may not, and that's just the way it is. And so I love this idea of just letting go. The other question is a lot of entrepreneurs, so they have some drive, and they reach some level. They for example, they're coaching or they're speaking at a big event with big names, and sometimes even I feel this. It's like I don't feel qualified to be here. I don't feel qualified, and it's how do we let go of self-doubt and overcome imposter syndrome?
Yes, imposter syndrome, which you already know, right, Chris? It pops up,
Yeah.
and you think you're a fraud. You think you're this imposter. Like I'm not competent enough, and that's where you just have to catch yourself. And understanding, first of all, that this beautiful muscle we possess, it's how you use it that makes all the difference. And for me, that's where I realized, oh, shoot, I'm a lethal weapon in the Marine Corps, not because, I'm a woman or I have the motivation or the discipline. I'm a lethal weapon because of the way I think. And I use this muscle to redirect my focus and whatever it is that I want to achieve. So understanding that, realize that this beautiful muscle called your brain, it's just like this suggestion engine. As soon as you wake up, it's suggesting so many ideas, so many thoughts. And that's where you have to be, the leader to say, hey, mind, thank you for those suggestions, but those aren't going to work. I need to do this. We need to take charge even of this beautiful thing called our mind and tell it where we want to go, right? And this is where a morning ritual comes into play, is in recognizing our thoughts and redirecting our mindset in a way that it serves us. So having said that, Chris, it's the same way you let go of being an imposter. It's, giving yourself that self-kindness, a healthy dose of, you know what? I might be a Latina. I might be 5 feet 2 inches, but I'm going to do the best that I can with what I have amongst these males, these wolves that are around me who see me as the weakest link. So the mind, that's where you want to focus and tell yourself, I got this. So it comes down to the self-talk, redirecting your thoughts and your focus to spark momentum, to let go of the imposter syndrome.
Is one thing that's really interesting is, like when I get, I'll just say when I get imposter syndrome, like really bad, it's like you feel like, but then you just kind of force yourself just to go through the motions, and just like to get through it. And you just, and it's, you come out stronger, and each time it gets less and less. And
it's like you turn down the volume of self-doubt, and eventually you kick self-doubt and perfectionism to the curb. So for the viewers that are watching, when when they do feel it's that self-talk, what are you going to tell yourself? Because if you can't accept yourself from other people, it's going to be hard for other people to accept you. So it ultimately starts with you.
As we were coming to the end of this conversation, which really interesting, you mentioned morning rituals. How and why are morning rituals important to self-discipline and success? And if you could talk a little bit about, one habit for elevating mindset for entrepreneurs.
Yes. I love everything that ties into self-discipline, structure, organization. It goes back to my militaristic way of thinking that sometimes works, but sometimes it doesn't as an entrepreneur. So why is this morning ritual so important? And how can it help an entrepreneur right?
Yeah.
Something simple as a morning ritual. So it's how you develop this beautiful muscle called self-discipline. So this entrepreneur thinks, you know what, I'm not really disciplined. Okay, boo, I got you. Start with every day, wake up. I wake up first every day between 4:30 and 5 o'clock in the morning. It's just, I'm a retired Marine officer, and I actually wake up earlier now than I did when I was in the military. It works for me, So, and it's one of the many things I share in my Insta stories on social media. I show my bed is made, right? So make your bed. Wake up, make that bed. And it's that intention you put behind that morning ritual that makes it a ritual. Because that's another question I've been asked, Chris, if I may. What's the difference between a routine and a ritual? So it becomes a ritual when you set an intention. So as I wake up, Chris, I'm making my bed, and I'm so grateful that I have this beautiful place to sleep, to rest. Many people aren't as fortunate, but here I am making my bed in the comfort of my own home. So it's being intentional with what you do that creates it a morning ritual. And how it helps entrepreneurs, it strengthens their self-discipline. They can let go of procrastination because they're doing something productive. And this automatically contributes to their self-worth because they've achieved something so simple in the morning. You see where I'm going with this, Chris? Yeah. And then this just creates a ripple effect.
Mm-hmm. Momentum. I've read this recently. I came across this excellent book called Make Your Bed by Admiral William McRaven, which really interesting. Based on what you're talking about, I started going to sleep much earlier. That way I could wake up much earlier. And before it was like I tried to wake up earlier, but I could never because I was so. But then if you go to sleep earlier, it's like, and then it's like. But I love these rituals, and then you also get started earlier, and you're ahead of everybody. So
yes,
yeah.
I actually started. I haven't read the book, but I was a Marine Corps drill instructor. Several years ago, and as a drill instructor, I had the honor of training over 500 women recruits for the Ridders of Combat. And the first thing I trained and I taught them was how to make a disciplined bed. The bed had to be impeccable. So picture 65 women recruits in the squad bay. The first thing they do, is make their bed. So this is where that idea stems from, and it just works.
Yeah. Wonderful conversation. I really loved it. Really great vibe and topic. How can people follow you on social media, visit your website, and contact you?
Yes, they can contact me directly if they need like a blueprint for more clarity so they can spark momentum, let go of imposter syndrome, right? Let go of perfectionism. I offer a free blueprint. They can go to my website, Sandra Gonzalez, and that's with 2 Z's, right? Sandra Gonzalez, not with an S, sandragonzalez.com, or they can follow me on Instagram at Coach Sandra Gonzalez.
Yeah. And for all the listeners out there, thank Sandra for a wonderful show. Be sure to follow her on her socials, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram. She's also got a place which will be in the show notes where you can book a call with her, see if it's the right fit. And with that, thanks so much for coming on to the podcast and giving so many nuggets of wisdom.
Thank you so